We will never turn our back on a single Scot.
We've got to wrestle with those challenges.
This is the same nonsense we have heard time and time again.
This is our country. Let's fix it together.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Planet Holyrood. I'm Paul Hutcheon, the political editor of the Daily Record, and I'm joined this week by the Labour MP for Alloa and Grangemouth, Brian Leishman. Brian was first elected at the 2024 general election after being a councillor. Brian, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Thrilled to be here.
So I think that voters will know you as a man of the left. You're on the left wing of the Labour Party. And they'll also know, if they read the papers, that you had the whip withdrawn last year for, I think, 4 months.
That's right.
This was because you had rebelled on things like the two-child benefit cap and other issues. Do you think, are you the bad boy of Scottish Labour?
A bad boy. When you look at my social media and some of the abuse that I get on there, and people say that I've looked like Penfold off Danger Mouse, I don't think I can be defined as a bad boy, really. Do you?
Well, I mean, a rebel? Do you feel more comfortable being described as a rebel?
I would describe myself probably more like a rebel than a bad boy. But I think anyone that considers himself to be a rebel, then you've got to have question marks over them in the first instance. I think, to be honest, when I look at what I have been against the party with, I would just describe myself as a Labour man.
So, see, when you had the whip withdrawn, did you think at the back of your mind, this is it for me, they're not going to let me back in?
No, I didn't plan that far in advance, to be honest with you. Just got to take each vote as it comes. If we want to talk about football at any point in the podcast, we're happy to do that. There's a cliche, you can have that one for free. Just got to take each vote as it comes and just think, well, what's the right thing to do here? What's going to benefit my constituents? And that's just basically my politics.
How did your colleagues in the Scottish Labour group treat you when you were sort of in Siberia, as it were? I mean, were most of them pretty friendly, helpful? I mean, did some of them shun you? What was it like?
You know what? My colleagues in the Scottish Labour Party are a very, very good bunch. I have to say, I'm very fortunate. I've got a new whip there in Gregor Poynton. Gregor is very accommodating, always willing to talk things over, any sort of differences I've got. He is absolutely first class. And you know, there's lots of good comrades in the group. I have to say, and I would like to think that I can call a few of them friends.
So let's talk about the main story. I was going to say this week, but probably this year, maybe even this decade, the Lord Mandelson scandal. Even given a summary of it is quite difficult. So we've known for some time that he was a friend of the paedophile Epstein, that he maintained this friendship even after the conviction. And what we've learned from the DOJ files in the US that have come out is that he seemed to share sensitive information to Epstein when he was a minister in Gordon Brown's government, in the cabinet. It seems like there's a suggestion that he received money from Epstein many years before that. And some of the exchanges between Mandelson and Epstein are just scuzzy, to say the least. See, when you think of like all the scandals in UK politics of the last 50 years, where do you think this ranks?
It's got to be up there, isn't it, really, when you think about it? I mean, you've just laid it out absolutely brilliantly there. It's wrong on so many levels. There's personal betrayal there, there's betrayal to the Labour Party, but most importantly, there's betrayal to the country. We're talking about sensitive information that only cabinet ministers and people at that level have actually privy to. And to share it for other people's gain, and if there's been any personal gain, it's pretty despicable, isn't it? So I think when you want to rate it into the scandals, if you can do such a thing, it's right up there.
So there's a whole process now in train for Mandelson. I think there's a police investigation, there's going to be a government investigation, but inevitably the focus is going to be on the Prime Minister and his advisors, because Mandelson was appointed as the UK's man in the US, and that is despite the fact that Keir Starmer knew about the continued friendship between Mandelson and Epstein. Now, I think that you've already been on the record in relation to Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. I think you've said that he should be removed from power, or there should be changes in relation to him. How about the future of the Prime Minister? I mean, do you sense that he's going to fall as a result of this scandal?
Well, best case scenario, I think you've just got to say that he's been duped. And for the most prominent and most powerful politician in the country, you don't want him being duped. whoever's in position. So I think he's got to have, I described it, I think, as a period of self-reflection and see what he could have done better to avoid this. And when it comes down to it as well, I've been quite clear and on the record in saying about Mandelson. Mandelson is Mandelson. Mandelson has been living in plain sight. He historically has always shown who he is on the side of. He has purged left-wingers out of the Labour Party. He has, in his own words, I think, actively worked against Jeremy Corbyn when he was the democratically elected leader of the Labour Party. And he's been anti-trade union. And he has courted and been seduced by incredible wealth and the wealthiest in society. If we want to say, inverted commas, the elite or the establishment, then those types. Peter Mandelson pretty much embodies and typifies what's wrong with British politics over the last few decades, I would say.
Do you think, though, that in relation to the Prime Minister, that it might be better for Labour if he decides to call it a day, given he's had a pretty mixed start? And I think by common consent, appointing Mandelson has been his biggest blunder. Would it not be better all round if he made way in the short to medium term?
Well, it's a serious question he's got to ask himself, and he's got to live by his own standards. And what he said, I think it was the 5th of July, the day after, when he was standing on the steps at Downing Street and said, we've got to put country before party. Well, he's actually got the opportunity here of doing both, of looking after the country's needs, but also the Labour Party's needs as well. There's been some serious political missteps and misjudgments, and you touched on it there, what I've said about Morgan McSweeney. As his chief of staff, that's his guy, as it were. So, and when you look at these mistakes and missteps and misjudgments, Morgan McSweeney has been front and centre of them all.
Do you not think, though, I mean, you mentioned McSweeney, he advises, but ultimately it's the politicians who have to decide whether they take that advice. Ultimately, is it not on Keir Starmer most of all?
Well, he is the Prime Minister. As I say, he's the most prominent and influential politician in the country, and there comes great responsibility with that. I can only imagine what sort of responsibility is on his shoulders. He's got the entire nation to look after. And again, it is another misjudgment in relying so heavily on Morgan McSweeney for political advice.
Do you think that Starmer will lead Labour into the next general?
Well, if you look at the next general election in 2029, I would say it's a big ask for him. He's got an awful lot. He's got an awful long way to come back. He's certainly. I've already touched on football. I'll go for boxing. He's taking an 8 count at the minute.
Would you like him to be leader going into the election?
I want Keir Starmer to be the very best Prime Minister possible, because you know what? I'm a Labour Party member. I'm a Labour MP. I want Keir Starmer to be a success. Do I think that Keir Starmer needs to do better? Then absolutely. I've been on record to say that. That's not going to come as a shock to anybody. But I want him to do well.
So let's look at Scottish Labour and the Holyrood election campaign that's coming up in a couple of months. The polls don't lie. The polls are very clear. Labour are about 20 points behind the SNP, and I think they're about 5 points behind Reform, languishing in third place. Why is that, do you think?
I would say there's got to be an element that we've got to pin that on Keir Starmer's leadership and some of the missteps and misjudgments that I've already touched on that's happened down at Westminster. They haven't benefited the Scottish Labour Party. But what I will say is, yes, the polls don't look rosy. Of course they don't. But we've got 90 odd days to go. And Anna Sauer, I absolutely categorically believe, would be a far superior First Minister for Scotland than John Swinney. And that ultimately is going to be the choice that the electorate has. It's going to either be, do you want more SNP, 2 decades out of ideas, lumbering on, nothing fresh, or a fresh pair of hands in Butte House? I'm out there campaigning across my constituency, which has got 3 wonderful candidates in it, and I want to get them elected and get Anna Sauer in Butte House.
I think when I speak to Labour people and they look at the polling just now, they don't think it's Anna Sauer's fault. They think it's because of the UK government rather than anything that Scottish Labour has done. So, see, when you're chapping doors in relation to the Holyrood election campaign, what are voters saying about Starmer?
It's not positive. I think that's quite clear. I mean, to sit here, Paul, across the table from you and say, no, everything's absolutely fine, when I'm knocking doors across my constituency and people are thinking, Keir's doing a great job, that is not happening. Quite clearly. But they do also, I'm going to spin that around and say that they do appreciate, they do look at Anna Sauer and think, well, you know what? I think he'd be a far more competent and a far better bet as First Minister than more of John Swinney.
What do you make of the Scottish Labour campaign so far in terms of tactics, strategy, policy?
I would say that I think we have been out there, the ground campaign, and you saw this in the by-election in Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse. We are an effective election machine. We're good at getting the vote out. It's been well documented that we've got a good and healthy sized pot in the fighting fund. So we're in a good place in that regard. I would also say as well as over the last sort of week to 10 days, and I know that parties in Scotland in the run up to the Holyrood election have got to kind of box clever of when they release their policies. But when we look at the sort of things that we've been highlighting, the mistakes, the chronic errors that the SNP have made, we're good in that. Also, as well as something that is in the paper, I think today as well, as what we're planning on doing for knife crime. That's a huge vote winner for young people that don't feel safe, but also for parents, grandparents, extended family. Our policies are good. We've now got to go out there and be effective at selling them.
Do you not think they're a bit policy-like, though? Things like cost of living crisis. People are sick of being skint. They want more money in their pockets. And I mean, Labour have focused on the NHS. They focused on the critique of the Scottish government. Do you think they need to do a bit more on what is like the key number one issue for voters?
Well, you know what? You touched on the NHS. When I've been relentless at moaning about how sore I am today. I'm waiting on an operation, so that's the state of the health service. And the health service is full of fantastic staff, but it's been chronically let down by the SNP. And when it comes to cost of living, absolutely, that is pretty much the primary concern for people. I've got an inbox of constituents that are complaining about that. But let's have a look at some of the positive things that Labour have done. We've increased the national minimum wage. We've increased the living wage. I'm from when the Clackmannanshire side of my constituency, that's an ex-mining heartland. There's been hundreds of ex-miners that are now going to be better off because of a Labour government. So it's fair to say that we can sometimes, and you know, I have spoken about some of the missteps and misjudgments that we've made, but we've done a hell of a lot of good things too.
I was looking at some of the polling and it was digging deeper into it last week. And I think this was the one which showed that Labour are about 20 points ahead, 20 points behind the SNP. And if you drill down, you see that they're really struggling with younger voters and they're struggling with people who voted yes in 2014. I think it was something like 3 or 4% of 2014 yesers say they're going to vote Labour. Is that an issue for Labour? Do you think they need to do more in order to persuade pro-Indie voters to back an ass at this election?
Absolutely. We saw 50 odd SNP MPs down in Westminster unable to deliver independence. We've seen closing in 2 decades of the SNP here. They haven't managed to deliver independence. I would say that right now, you've touched on cost of living. That is the thing that's coming up on the doorsteps for me, as opposed to whether Scotland should be an independent nation or not. And I would also say, when you look at that kind of cohort of young people, there'll be some people that this will be their first Holyrood election that they'll get to vote in. And they've got to ask themselves a question, I think, do they want to cast their vote to have more of John Swinney when John Swinney was the Cabinet Secretary for Education at the time of the pandemic that signed off on a horrifically classist algorithm that punished kids from some of the most destitute postcodes, marked down their grades, impacting their life chances negatively, but then, by the same token, as a double whammy, improved the grades of kids from some of the more affluent areas in the country. That's a choice that young people, when they cast their vote this May, have got to think about, in my opinion.
There's going to be a Scottish Labour policy conference, I think, in Paisley later this month, and that's obviously against the backdrop of the Holyrood election. If an Sarwar was to say to you and to every other MP, give me one policy idea on the cost of living that you think that Labour should have in the manifesto, something that you think would make Scots better off, what would you go for?
Well, if we want to talk about, I'm going to talk about classic Labour Party values. Excuse me, Paul. And that is going to be the redistribution of power and wealth across society for the benefit of the many. Something that I've spoken about an awful lot in my first year and a bit down in Westminster has been redistribution of wealth, because over the last 14, 15 years, since 2010 really, since the advent of that horrific Tory government, we've seen, number one, austerity, policies by design that have crippled and immiserated communities and plunged millions into poverty. 2010, I think it was about 30,000 people relying on emergency food parcels to get by. Now it's 3.5 million people across the country and rising. Then we saw a global pandemic that I touched on there just a second ago that saw wealth inequality accelerate at eye-watering rates. The richest got richer, whereas people on, off, and on furlough, and 80% were spending more of their hard-earned money just to get by in the essentials. And then on the back of that, we've seen this crippling cost of living crisis that is basically making so many people worse off. And again, at corporations and the very wealthiest accelerating away. A 2% annual wealth tax on people with assets of over £10 million every year would generate in the region of £24 billion.
Could that be done at Holyrood, though? Is that not a Westminster issue?
Well, I think why not have then a Scottish Labour government in charge at Holyrood working hand in glove in partnership with a UK Labour government at Westminster? I think instead of having two governments that are butting heads at times, although the working relationship between the Labour government in Westminster and the SNP in Holyrood is better, and the SNP admit that. If we had two Labour governments in Scotland's interests, who knows what could happen?
How about something like council tax, which has largely remained unreformed since the 90s? I mean,
Well, absolutely. I know it's very easy to point the finger at Labour and say that for 100 years we said we're going to abolish the House of Lords, but it's been about 20 years since the SNP said they're going to abolish council tax, which is a really regressive form of taxation, and it's outdated as well as unfair. That would also help. But I will say, redistribution of power and wealth, Paul, that's what the Labour Party should always be about. Let's get society better for the many that need it.
we're not in a situation, though, regardless of what Anas Sarwar comes up with for the election, people they don't make a distinction between Scottish and UK Labour. So whatever's going on down the road, it's inevitably going to undermine Anas Sarwar up here because they're not seen as a separate party.
Well, I think Anas has shown historically that he is his own man, and he can take a different view of things as opposed to UK leadership. And I think that's only healthy because Scotland, we are a nation, and we have got our own needs as a nation. So I think Anas has at times shown his independence of thought from UK leadership, and that's healthy.
You say he's done it at times. Do you think he should do that more? Maybe like Burnham and Sadiq Khan?
Well, it depends exactly on whatever the specific issue is. I have absolutely no doubt, in fact, I am in 100% knowledge that Anas wants what is best for the people of Scotland. There is no doubt in every decision he takes that that's the case.
Yeah, it just seems like the relationship between Scottish Labour and UK Labour is an issue. That you could come up with the greatest policies in the history of politics, but he's got this ball and chain in the form of Keir Starmer dragging him to the seabed. Is that not going to be like one of the key things in the election, that he just can't escape from the shadow of the UK government?
Well, no, this is a Scottish election. It's specific Scottish issues. When we look at what Holyrood can control, the devolved issues such as health, education, those are just two things straight away. Local councils as well, let's be honest as well. It's the immiseration that local councils have had. Where are the big beasts in local councils? Where are the big personalities anymore? Local councils under the SNP have been starved of funding in cash. So basically councillors at this time of year, funnily enough, just get a kind of a catalogue, a suite of these are the cuts, have a pick and mix out of them. They're not able and got the ability any longer to actually meaningfully improve communities. And that's all wrong. That's a good enough reason for getting rid of the SNP.
You said earlier Scotland's a nation. What's your view on India F2? Do you think Scots should know what the route is to a second referendum?
I think there's bigger issues, more pertinent issues in the country at the moment than that. Let's get on top of cost of living. Let's try and transform Scottish society. One of the things that I would say is I don't want to talk about stability. Stability is fine, okay, that's fine. You can have a small period of that, but what we need is transformation. We need transformational politics, transformational policies that are going to make the country much better for the millions of people that need it.
Could you ever vote for independence?
Could I ever vote for independence? Oh, I mean, that's an absolute unfathomable. That's who knows what comes down the line. I'm not going to look into a crystal ball and talk about independence when there's people right now with my inbox. People are struggling. Cost of living is the thing.
How did you vote in the first referendum?
It's a secret ballot.
Aye, but you can tell me.
No, 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 Tom. It's sanctity. When I go out campaigning, and I'm doing it right now across the constituency,
Well,
people
look,
don't
you would
need
have
to
voted
tell
Labour
me.
in the general election.
People don't need to tell me how they vote. That's a secret ballot. That's all about democracy. If
How
you
about the Brexit referendum? How did you vote on that?
I think there was a solid left-wing case for exiting the European Union, because what I would say is, I would say the European Union will not allow a truly socialist society.
So you voted for Brexit?
I think it's a secret ballot as well. I think that I've got to respect
It
everyone's
sounds like you voted for independence and Brexit.
Skexit and Brexit. No,
Aye.
you're not gonna get me nailed down on that, Paul. Come on.
So you thought in relation to, has Brexit been a success, do you think?
No, absolutely not. But I think as well, when you look at the catalogue of chancellors that have negotiated it, then that's been a big issue. Your Goves and your Rees-Moggs and your Johnsons of the world, it had disaster written all over it, having those chancellors in charge.
So if I was to think that you voted for Brexit in that referendum nearly a decade ago, would I be on safe ground?
You'd be on whatever ground you wanted to be on, Paul. What I would say is, as well,
It's interesting. That's the only that and Indie Ref and 20. Those are the only questions you will not give a direct answer to.
Right, Brexit could have been something fantastic, but it's been proved by the actors involved to be a bit of a disaster. Let's be honest. It really could have been. The European Union, I'm maybe a traditionalist. I'm going to say I like my politicians to be elected by people. Do I think that we should have the House of Lords? No. I think there should be a directly elected second chamber. Absolutely. The European Union, your Ursula von der Leyen types, they are not elected. Now, is that democratic? Absolutely not. I think the sovereignty of each nation is important.
I mean, you said that Indie Ref 2 is not a priority. There's bigger issues to look at.
Absolutely.
Do you think there'll be another referendum in your lifetime?
What am I, 43? I hope so. I hope I'm going to be around for an awful long time. Yeah, who knows what the political landscape will look like? Let's be honest, in the last 2014, in the last 12 years, the political landscape of the country has changed dramatically. Who knows what lies ahead? But let's deal with the matter in hand right now. Let's transform
Would you vote
society.
yes again?
I'm going to vote in a way that would transform society for the better, for the working class across the entire country.
Here's a question for you. What would you rather be, a Labour MP or a Labour MSP?
Oh, I'm currently a Labour MP, and you know what? It's the job of a lifetime.
Would you rather be in Holyrood?
Well, you know, the good people in Alloa and Grangemouth have elected me to do a job for them down in Westminster, and it is an honour of my life to do it. It is genuinely the greatest job I've ever had.
I mean, people are talking about the Labour leadership. Is Starmer going to survive? Obviously, if Labour falls short in May, there's going to be a leadership contest for Scotland as well. Could you ever imagine contesting or going for a leadership position in Scotland?
Oh, we've got Anna Saba. I've just said for the last 15 to 20
if there's a
minutes.
vacancy, though, either leader or deputy, could you imagine going for it?
I'm 100% behind getting Anna Saba into Butte House.
He's not going to be around forever, though. If there was a vacancy, would you be interested?
No guarantee I'm going to be around forever, Paul. That's people are going to get their chance at the ballot box at the next general election to make that decision for me.
It sounds like you're keeping the door open, that you might be persuadable should there be a vacancy.
The priority right now is getting people's cost of living into a much better place. The priority right now is getting fantastic Scottish Labour candidates forming a government with Anna Sarwar at its head.
So let's just look at your background and your past in terms of your employment history. You used to be a golfing pro and a golfing instructor. That's not really an orthodox route to becoming a socialist Labour MP.
It's good. It's something a bit different. That's what we need, though. We don't, and respect to anyone that does their PPE degrees and so on and so forth. It wasn't for me. I was a failed student of 6 weeks at Stirling University. What a wonderful campus, wonderful people, but it just was not the right avenue for me at that time. I gave up after 6 weeks. Became a golf pro for nearly 24 years. Loved it. Became a Labour councillor in the Labour heartlands of Perth and Kinross. Here's a fact for you, less or known, we were actually the fastest growing political group. We went from 1 to 2 councillors in 2022. The problem was, though, we then became the fastest decreasing group when I had to resign in 2024 after getting elected, right enough. But, yeah, you need more people from different backgrounds. You know, I think there's only now 2 minors actually that are sitting in Westminster.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You know, in previous decades, you get
You would have
campaign
lots.
group folk coming from a mining background.
Absolutely.
You came from Glen Eagles and golf.
Well, that's sometimes you've got to bring down the capitalist establishment from within, Paul.
My perception of pro golfers, probably because I used to follow the Ryder Cup, and you look at the US team, and they were like Republicans to a man. Is it not quite right wing?
Golf.
That, pro golf as a world in terms of the players, do they not hold quite conservative opinions?
Well, I would say that you've got to have serious question marks about some of the players that have went away and joined live golf. In the same way that you would have serious questions about some of the football players that have went over and played in Saudi Arabia. Very questionable human rights over there. So it's a bunch of sole traders, really. The Ryder Cup is a bunch of sole traders playing a team game. Now, some might say that that's a striking comparison for politics.
I suppose, though, it's rich men, isn't it, who've got a lot of money. It shouldn't be a massive surprise that they
Paul,
would.
You're being very classist there as well, I would say, because when you look at it from a Scottish
pro
perspective,
golf. I mean, are there many socialist pro golfers?
Not many. There's one less.
You wouldn't need a trade union for them, would you?
Well, we've got the Professional Golfers Association, which, to be honest, is a fantastic organisation. Actually, they're very good, and they've got absolutely wonderful the John Bywaters Trust, so that members that fall on hard times for whatever reason, as well as there is a fighting fund in there to try and look after members. So no, the Professional Golfers Association, it's not a trade union, but it's a wonderful organisation.
I mean, I read the piece about some of your clients when you're at Glen Eagles: Shakira, Ryan Giggs, John Travolta, Gerard Butler, Gary Caldwell, and 66 Miss World contestants.
Gary Caldwell's made that list.
Yeah, I mean,
he's the only one in the list that's got the winner against France, though, right enough.
I mean, why did you give up that world for Westminster?
Well, what is it? I think this is a Paul Hutcheon comment as well. Right? Okay, there's obviously the showbiz world there at Glen Eagles, which was fantastic, very interesting. But unlike Peter Mandelson, I never craved it. But did you once say that what is politics is showbiz for the ugly?
I might have said that, yeah. I mean, I think I ripped it off from someone else. I don't think I'm the originator of the comment.
It's not your original comment, but well, anyway, as I said right at the beginning, people give me dog's abuse on Twitter, so maybe I'm the ugly bit of politics.
Do you miss it?
Oh, you know what? I met some fantastic people. It was brilliant experiences. I got to go and play at far-flung bits of the globe. It was wonderful in that regard. But that bit of my life's over now. I don't get enough chance to go and actually play golf. The job is, I'm not want to sound like a martyr, but it is all-consuming. I absolutely love it. But that bit of my life's over.
Let's just close on Keir Starmer. We opened with him. He's the man of the moment. Do you think he's still going to be Labour leader in the summer?
You were asking me if I thought he was going to be a Labour leader in the
I'm going to bring it forward now. I mean, I think it's unlikely he's going to be leader going into the general election, but if they have a bad election, that's when everyone thinks he's going to call it quits.
Well, Keir's going to have to. He's got a big comeback on the cards. He's going to have to really, really turn things around. His own performance, but also the fortunes and the approval ratings of the party. We'll see what happens.
Would you expect him to see him on the campaign trail at Holyrood?
I hope so. He's the Prime Minister of the country, and you've got to
you've got
to give him his place in that regard as well. As if he can improve his own personal performance and the party's approval ratings, then yeah, he could be an asset out in the campaign trail.
The question is he damaged goods now, given the admission that he appointed Mandelson despite knowing of this ongoing friendship? I mean, can he recover from this?
He can recover from it. He's made an apology yesterday. It was a start, but now we've got to release the documents and have have a full public inquiry. It's of that scale. It's that gravity. You said it yourself. It's a huge political event. We really should be having a public inquiry, and also a public inquiry into exactly what happens in British politics, because you can see right now people's trust of politicians is on the floor. Things have got to change. Opening it up, making politics much more transparent, much more honest. That should be the foundation, the bedrock of any society.
See if the next leadership contest was between Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham. Who would you prefer of those two candidates?
Well, Andy Burnham's not an MP.
Well, see, he managed to get in the latter half of this parliament. You know, somehow managed to sneak in under the radar.
Well, Paul, I'm not going to launch anyone's leadership campaign. To be honest, you've already tried to get me to launch one for myself. So if I'm not going to launch one for myself, I'm not going to launch one for anybody else. So hypotheticals in that one. Did I want Andy Burnham to be the candidate for Gorton and Denton? 100% yes. He is an accomplished performer. He's incredibly well thought of, and he's done a hell of a job down in Manchester. He's talented. And I would say he's on a miniature Tony Benn route as well. As he's getting older, his career progresses, he's getting more left wing. I like that.
How about Angela? Do you think she's got what it takes?
I don't think that Angela is as left wing as me. She'll have her fans in the party, but I'm not going to launch a leadership campaign for her. No.
Sounds like you prefer Burnham to Rayner, if push comes to shove.
You've got me down as was it Skexit, Brexit, Burnhamite? What else have you got me labelled? You're not going
to back West Street, are you?
No, I can give you that one. Absolutely not. No.
Do you think that would be worse than what we've got just now?
I don't know if it'd be worse or comparable or even better, to be honest. But I don't think Wes's association with Mandelson is going to do him any favours.
How about Ed Miliband?
Ed Miliband and I, we clashed on the Grangemouth refinery, which was Scotland's biggest industrial issue. It should have stayed open, in my opinion. He's a Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero. He should have done more to try and prolong the life of the refinery. Final question: what's your prediction for the Holyrood election? Scottish Labour before that are going to close the gap. I think you will see the gap tighten an awful lot over the next 90 days, 3 months or so. And certainly I'll be doing everything I possibly can to get Annis into Butte House. That doesn't sound like you're predicting a Labour victory. I think the gap is going to close. I don't even put a fiver on a coupon at the weekend, so I'm not going to be making predictions. But I do think the gap is initially going to close, and Annis is the best candidate to be First Minister. Do you think you'll be the next First Minister? I hope so. But do you think you will be? I think, with the policies that we're going to announce over the next 3 months, the conversations that we're going to have, the party machinery behind them, a united front in Scotland, I think Annis has got a phenomenal chance. All right, Brian, that's great. Thanks very much to Brian for joining me, and thanks also to Angus from the Daily Record video team who produced this episode. You can listen to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or watch it on the Record's YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for the latest news and the best bits of the podcast.
We will never turn our back on a single Scot.
We've got to wrestle with those challenges.
This is the same nonsense we have heard time and time again.
This is our country. Let's fix it together.